Welcome to No Apologies. I'm Dana Lash. Today, bringing attention to a couple of videos that I think just illustrate why this meteor that NASA just identified, and it was reported that it's apparently coming through Earth's orbit and going to be, I think, like 2.4 million miles within Earth, within the touch of Earth. And potentially, I mean, it's not going to hit the planet, but still, we could hope, right? But this, honestly, because it would put an end to our stupidity once and for all. It doesn't have to be a meteor, right? I'm not really like partial about how the end times come about. A new variant from that lab in Wuhan, or maybe, you know, God sending another flood, it's all the same. The important thing is that we don't infect any other planets or solar systems with the real virus that's killing us, our viral stupidity. Case in point, the first truly ridiculous video I would like to share with you today announces that Chicago public schools are making great strides in something that they call student safety. So how are they keeping students safe, you ask? I mean, as opposed to educating them? By making the bathrooms, everyone, gender neutral, meaning anybody can walk into anybody else's bathroom, except if you're staff bathrooms only. And that's going to make kids safer, according to Cami Pratt and Deb Spraggins, a couple of the Chicago School District's Title IX officers. I'm not making this up. Watch.
The new school year is off to a strong start as we've welcomed our students back to our school buildings 5 days each week.
On top of ensuring that each of our schools is a safe learning environment, we're also taking steps to create more inclusive and supportive schools. One change that will be implemented this school year relates to our school bathrooms. In compliance with new federal guidelines, all CPS students and staff will have fair and equitable access to bathroom facilities that align with their gender identity.
I know you're probably asking yourself, how could a girl feel safer with a boy walking into the bathroom as they're going to the bathroom? Or maybe like dealing with, you know, girl stuff that girls deal with. The answer is, doesn't matter, bigot. No, it's not, they're not going to feel safe. Nobody cares if a woman feels safe if a boy walks into the girls' room. Nobody cares about that. Nobody cares about that. This whole thing, gender dysphoria, it's all about making the man feel safe, the male feel safe. And I know that you're probably thinking, didn't a 15-year-old girl just get raped by a boy out in Loudoun County, Virginia? He went into a bathroom and he was wearing a skirt and he raped a girl, and there was a whole big, and then they transferred him and he assaulted somebody else. Yes, that actually did happen. And yes, the school board in Loudoun County, Virginia did, yes, actually try to cover it up because they wanted to support their gender neutral bathroom policies. But look, like I said, that asteroid is hopefully coming, so maybe we won't have to worry about it. Here's more from the Chicago Public School Brain Trust.
We will be providing all schools with updated signage that makes our bathrooms more inclusive. It will identify the fixtures available in each restroom and make it clear that all restrooms are open for use by anyone who feels comfortable.
Except the staff bathrooms. By the way, what was with the duck? Now, because they're injecting so much gender confusion into the kids are going to need a lot of signs showing them which bathroom fixtures they can expect to find in the bathrooms, right? Apparently, kids don't know what a urinal is now, or a toilet, or which bathroom they may find either of said fixtures in. Where's the duck? But that's totally understandable, since girls apparently now use urinals and boys have periods and they'll need feminine hygiene dispensers. Remember, it's all about student safety, guys. Yay, science. It has nothing to do with indoctrinating your children at all. Now, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, Cami Pratt also wants to assure everybody that they shouldn't worry. The all-important staff, the staff guys, the staff have their own bathrooms, even if little girls and boys don't. Anyone of any gender can walk into the students' bathrooms anytime they want. But the staff bathrooms, they're for staff only. Watch.
Staff will continue to have staff-only restrooms available to them. This is an incredibly important step to increase gender equity for all.
Okay, I got a question. What happens if a student identifies as a staff member? I mean, let's just say, for example, like an 8-year-old's like, hi, I want to identify as the school janitor. Can I use the staff-only bathroom? And if not, why, you bigot? I mean, after all, if a boy wants to identify as a girl and a girl wants to identify as a boy, they can be, according to Chicago Public Schools. I mean, after all, that's how identity works for this Marxist progressive left. You just slip on your new identity, your cosplaying as whatever that you want to identify as, and then demand that everybody go along with it. Now, Chicago Public Schools acronym is CPS, which is so ironic because someone does need to call Child Protective Services immediately. These people, this is insane. And kids most definitely aren't safe with these kind of policies. So it's not obvious, it's not about safety, it's about what? It's about making the rage mob happy, I think. And the other thing that gender neutral bathrooms aren't about is improving Chicago public schools. I mean, here's some hard facts. Like the reality out there that there are boys and girls about Chicago's public schools. Only 21% of kids in Chicago's public schools actually met or exceeded English standards this year, compared to 28% in 2019. And in math, only 16% met or exceeded expectations, down from 24% the year before the pandemic. Similar downward trends, though not as steep, were seen on the SAT college entrance exam administered to 11th graders, and only 23% of students met or exceeded expectations in English this year, down from 26% in 2019. And only 21% reached satisfactory levels in math this year, compared to 27% before the pandemic. And in other words, Chicago public schools are proficient at the bathroom thing, but not anything else, apparently. Stupidity. You know, 11th graders who can't read proficiently, and soon they are not going to know if, like, I don't know what bathroom to use. Is this a toilet? What is this? It's almost like the leftists that are controlling Chicago's public schools want kids to be dumb, confused, and filled with anxiety, because that's how Marxists can continue Marxisting, right? They want disorder. They have to have chaos and confusion. Their goal is to overturn cultural norms, much like the Maoist cultural revolution, at every turn. Because Marxists, they want to destabilize society, starting with the very building block, the family, institutions like police and schools, and above all, they want to destabilize your kids and your kids' general idea of well-being and self-identity. And that's why you're feeling that all-out assault on this binary understanding of sex. Confused and angry people are easier to manipulate, and the left wants an entire generation of confused and angry kids to revolt against their enemy, normality and reality. And if they can indoctrinate your kids, they can create a generation of dummies, like this clip here. So Whoopi Goldberg, right? People who can't think, but they're filled with resentment and anger and stupidity, which brings me to this video, because the asteroids, I don't think it's still made impact with our planet yet, so we have to finish the show. So right as the Mississippi Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization was kicking off with the potential to overturn Roe v. Wade, and then not criminalizing abortion, but kicking it back to the states, Whoopi Goldberg got very, very angry. You cannot tell her that babies cannot be killed in the womb for any reason at all. First off, I don't know why she has such an issue with fetuses. Watch.
Do any of you men have any eggs or the possibility of carrying a fetus? How dare you talk about what a fetus wants? You have no idea.
I've got to say that I am greatly entertained by her tone and what she's saying while wearing that sweatshirt that features a penguin holding a sign that says SNAP. You can't make that up. But have you met a fetus? Like, how do you know? I'm pretty sure fetuses, if a fetus could choose, a fetus probably wouldn't want to be ripped apart in utero. I mean, we just got done talking about how bathrooms are going to be gender neutral in Chicago's public schools, so dudes who say that they're girls, they can use them. And now we've been told by our health agencies that dudes also have periods, dudes have babies. The CDC calls them birthing persons, remember? Chest feeders. How dare Whoopi turf it up and act like men can't have babies? And we all know they can, since they can have babies, and they can shave too, according to Gillette. How dare Whoopi Goldberg say that dudes can't have an opinion on abortion? I mean, a man might need an abortion when the man gets pregnant. By the way, when did she become such a TERF? She's like surf and turf, right? Surf and I don't know what TERF would be. It's not the same thing as shake and bake, but whatever. For you normies out there, TERF means trans exclusionary radical feminist. And it's someone who says women are women and dudes are dudes, so stop. That's what that is. That's what TERF is. Soon we're gonna have to, I guess, is Whoopi Goldberg a TERF? What about some of those other TERFs who still have this backward belief that there's like this thing such as women? You know, the right-wing extremists, like the great tennis lesbian, Martina I cannot ever say her name, Navratilova, I'm not gonna say it right. But what about also J.K. Rowling, right? She said women. She said, what about the word women? That's all she said. And everyone screamed, TERF. TERF is just a funny word, right? Nerf herder, like Star Wars, but what about turf herder? I'm so gonna put that in my bio on Twitter. Who knew that Whoopi was such a surf and turf, turfing it up like those big time TERFs? And this is a funny word. And that clip that we just played, Whoopi says, how dare dudes talk about what a fetus wants? Cute Christina Aguilera song. How do men know that fetuses don't actually want to die? Maybe fetuses like want to be aborted? Is that honestly your argument? Like, you have something to back that up? Yeah, I talked to this fetus the other day. Maybe err on the side of not killing the fetus? Any update on the asteroid? For real. In any case, here's more from Whoopi. Watch.
I'm fine if you disagree with abortion. I have no problem with that. My problem comes when you tell me what I need to do with my doctor and my family. How dare you? How dare you?
I love the sweatshirt. That penguin is just her expression right now. Snap. It's really hard to take her seriously. Look at it. It's a penguin that says snap, and she's like going off. She's living her sweatshirt right now. She says she's cool if you disagree with abortion. She doesn't have any problem with that. But what she really doesn't like is when you tell her that what she can do with her body. Unless, of course, you're talking about vaccinations, then she's fine with telling people what to do with their bodies. But how dare you tell her that she can't ask a fetus about getting killed for no reason at all. So on the other hand, Whoopi Goldberg is cool with the government sticking an experimental injection in you, and how dare you suggest that you have the right to control your own body. Now, I know you're probably growing more confused. Clearly, she apparently believes in bodily autonomy, but only when you're, when you're talking about what, the right to get rid of somebody else, another living body inside of a woman's body, because that's how science works. But not when it comes to vaccinations. Then you have no right to control your body at all whatsoever. Now, she also clearly, because she's a big TERF, apparently believes that there's such a thing as dudes, right? Men exist. Good job, dudes. You exist. Even if the Chicago public schools don't believe that. So yes, men can suddenly exist again, and they can't have eggs or babies. And so they need to shut up about abortion, says Whoopi. Now, tomorrow, men will stop existing, because by tomorrow, she'll probably be for gender fluidity in public school bathrooms. So in any case, here's more from The View. Here they say Republicans are sex-obsessed and love the fun part of intercourse, but not the responsibility that can result. You know, the part where, the baby comes after the vodka wears off and the party's over. Watch this.
Sex sells everywhere. You can't see an aspirin commercial without somebody having sex. Mm-hmm. You cannot turn on any program, especially on streaming, where people are having... There's soft porn everywhere now.
Right.
They encourage all of that. It sells everything. Sex sells. Yeah. And yet when it comes to the reality of pregnancy, this particular group of people on the right in this country and these religious zealots do not understand the reality of what happens when you have sex. It's almost like they don't want to see that part. They just want to see the fun in the bed, not the second part.
No, we don't want to see that either, and we definitely don't want to see her talking about it. Jeez. There's your birth control right there. Free birth control, everybody. Just play that clip. Anyway, no, I think that's kind of why people have the position they have about conception and making sure you take care of your choices before conception, right? Apparently it's never occurred to her that the people that are using all the sex to sell stuff, that they're not on the right. Leftists dominate Hollywood. They dominate Madison Avenue. Hi, have you been there? You're literally in the industry. It's not conservative. They're not conservative people. These are not constitutionalists that do this. It's leftists who think that it's dandy for women to engage in sex work and be prostituted out. Joy says, though, that it's conservatives that are doing that, right? That it's conservatives that are obsessed with it, and that conservatives don't want the responsibility of what comes next. But it's conservatives that want to protect babies because they know what comes next. It's called a baby. It's cause and effect. Wow, if I engage in procreation, I might actually procreate. Science. And unlike the left, we think that that's worth protecting, right? The life situation and making sure that choices are before conception. Now it's the left that wants the fun part of it, but not the responsibility. And by the way, it's always the leftist Democrats that are constantly getting busted for sexual misconduct. Bill Clinton, Harvey Weinstein, Katie Hill, Al Franken, Andrew Cuomo, Charlie Rose, Matt Lauer. Jeffrey Toobin, whose last name is a verb now, Toobin on Zoom calls. No, that does not mean inner tubes on a river. What about Anthony Weiner? The guy's last name is Weiner. Why would you do that when that's your last name? It's the left who cannot control their libidos, apparently. And like I said, That asteroid can't come soon enough. By the way, it was Jeffrey Toobin who wanted his friend's daughter that he had an affair with to get an abortion after he got her pregnant. So it looks like he wanted all the fun, but none of the responsibility after, just to Joy Bear's point. So because the progressive left has lost their minds, as both of these videos show, I guess what, it's okay now if crazy people on the left are making art, poetry, films, and avocado toast. They just shouldn't be anywhere near positions of authority because this stupidity is dangerous. And by all means, if you want to be dumb about it, screw up your own life, but stay away from kids and the unborn, right? Give life a chance, and with your choices. If Marxist left stupidity continues at this pace, it'll definitely destroy civilization. That is if the asteroid doesn't get here first. Fingers crossed. Coming up, more trouble for Hunter Biden that you're not going to hear about from Legacy Press. Miranda Devine, author of the new book, Laptop from Hell, which also sounds like a horror film, joins me next, and she's got receipts. Thanks to Biden's economic policies, job numbers are still abysmal, inflation is still skyrocketing, and instead of following the former president's pro-business agenda that had the economy booming, Biden wants to tax corporations and pass trillion-dollar bills we can't pay for. Be proactive and take steps to protect your wealth and retirement by investing in gold and precious metals. Legacy Precious Metals can help. Washington keeps printing money to pay for their outrageous bills, but all that does is devalue your dollar. Gold offers a hedge against inflation, and as the dollar gets weaker, gold gets stronger. The folks at Legacy Precious Metals are the gold standard when it comes to investing in precious metals. They have a team of experts who can counsel you on the best options for you and your family. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Call Legacy Precious Metals at 866-580-2088 or visit them online to download their free investor's guide at legacypminvestments.com. Welcome back. A new book dives into Hunter Biden's Laptop from Hell. It is not a blockbuster new horror film, but it is a blockbuster new book that details Hunter Biden's efforts to expand his family's business dealings in China and uncovers pretty explosive emails from Hunter's laptop that show that he was just lavished upon with gifts from Chinese officials while his father was vice president. There is so much to unpack here. And of course, corporate press is not discussing it. Joining me now is journalist, New York Post journalist and author of Laptop from Hell, Hunter Biden, Big Tech, and the Dirty Secrets That the President Tried to Hide, Miranda Devine. Miranda, good to see you, and congrats on the book. And I am made of questions right now. But first off, I'm so glad that you have covered this so intensely as you have, because we are still learning things from this laptop and and the level of corruption that was going on, and Joe Biden really selling out the office of the vice presidency and his access to power through his son Hunter Biden. You've said that we haven't really, that this story, and it has been suppressed. I mean, I've seen your book suppressed on Amazon. I saw how there was apparently a rip-off book. People have been trying to mess with sales of this. I have not seen a story more suppressed, maybe apart from COVID, than this story. Talk to me about why that is.
Hi, Dana. It's not really being suppressed on Amazon. It's done really well. It hit #1. It's still #2. It's doing pretty well.
Sold out.
We ran out of hardcovers. We printed a whole bunch of paperbacks, and there'll be more hardcovers. But there was a fake. I don't know why Amazon allows these counterfeit books to go up. And I've had, contact from a couple of readers who, including a 91-year-old man in California, his daughter wrote to me, and he was bitterly disappointed that he paid his money for this ridiculous rip-off. Looks like it's been written by Chinese because it's sort of, ridiculous English and garbage content. And they've spelt my name incorrectly. And he paid for this paperback, and this is what he got. And I know Amazon refunds people's money, but it really draws into question why it took them 4 days to take that down. But anyway, the story was suppressed when we first started reporting on the laptop, the New York Post, back in October last year, about 3 weeks before the election. And we did our due diligence. We published the contents of a couple of emails that were particularly damning because they put the lie to Joe Biden's constant refrain during the election campaign that he knew nothing about his son Hunter Biden's overseas business dealings. And there's so much evidence on the laptop and also in Tony Bobulinski, Hunter's former partner, in all his material, his documents, his emails, which overlap with the laptop, that Joe Biden met multiple times with Hunter Biden's business partners from Mexico and Russia and China and Kazakhstan and Ukraine. And he met them in Beijing. He met them in Washington, D.C. at his own home when he was vice president. He met them at Cafe Milano in Georgetown while he was vice president. So as always, it's the cover-up that really ends up coming back to bite you. And I think the lies that have been told by Joe Biden about his involvement in his family's influence peddling scheme, trading on his name, getting tens of millions of dollars, and compromising who is now the president of the United States in the eyes of China, in Russia, Ukraine. I mean, America's national interest is in jeopardy in this case.
Yeah, and you bring up an interesting point, because even after he decided that he didn't want to run, Joe Biden, in 2016, there was always that specter of still he might commit to run in a future race, which ultimately he did. And I think it's fair to say that they were also trading on that future influence too, correct?
That's right. But also remember that when Joe Biden met Tony Bobulinski in LA in 2017, a few months after he'd ended his term, his family had already spent the previous 2 years, the last 2 years of his vice presidency, trading on his name, working for the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative around the world, using the Biden name to open doors, to allow the CCP to invest in these countries. This is the imperialist way of President Xi and the Chinese Communist Party. And the Biden family and their partners were part of that. And, Hunter Biden expected the money was going to flow. He said $40 million that his family was owed by CEFC, this capitalist arm of Belt and Road Initiative, this energy company. And he wanted that money to be paid to the family for the previous 2 years' work. And the money clearly wasn't going to be paid until after Joe Biden stepped down. And Hunter Biden was very angry about May that year, because the money hadn't been forthcoming yet. And in subsequent months, tens of millions of dollars did come through from the Chinese.
And this is where it becomes, in my opinion, a huge national security issue, because you hit upon something with your reporting, Miranda, on this. The Belt and Road Initiative, for people who don't know what that is, that's China's their way of getting a toe in, basically, and helping countries with infrastructure and also expanding their network of control. And because you wrote about how the Bidens were with CEFC, working with CEFC to essentially do that. They were. Is it fair to say that they were making money by working with China to expand China's influence through Belt and Road? That's a bombshell to me.
That's what I think too. It's a bombshell. Another bombshell is that CEFC was also brokering the biggest deal China had done, energy deal with Russia. China was going to buy into Rosneft, which is the Russian state-owned energy company. Vladimir Putin was reluctant to do that, but Russia had been hammered with sanctions because of the MH17 downing of that plane over Ukraine, and America and Europe had placed these sanctions on them, and they really had no choice. And for President Xi, this was a golden opportunity to have this marriage between Russia and China and become the energy superpower of the world. And this was really detrimental to America. And right in the center of this sort of geopolitical minefield, this tectonic plate shifting of the power balance in the global energy world, was Hunter Biden, a crackhead, and his bumbling Uncle Jim, whose role seemed to be just to clean up after Hunter. Incredible that they were right in the center of that. And the only reason that deal fell over, and remember, Joe Biden had a nameplate that Hunter had made up for him. Joe Biden and Hunter Biden were going to have this office in Georgetown, and it was going to be CEFC America along with their Chinese partners. So Joe Biden was at the center of this. And he was going to benefit from it enormously. And the reason that they were giving all this money to the Bidens, why do you think? I mean, they weren't doing it because of their genius with international business. It was to open doors. It was that the vice president and perhaps future president embodied American prestige and power and money. And, it opened doors for them all over the world. And just one little example to show what Hunter Biden was being paid for. Ukraine, the corrupt energy company Burisma, was paying him $83,000, $333 a month to do very little, to be on their board. And when his father's term as vice president ended, a few weeks after that, Hunter Biden's payment was cut in half from Burisma. So, it was obvious. Everybody knew what this was all about. Hunter knew about it even in that ABC interview that he gave. He said that he wouldn't really amount to anything if it wasn't for his family name. I think it just became so sort of internalized and so normal for the Biden family. Joe Biden had been doing this since his earliest days as a senator in Delaware, and he just internationalized that Delaware influence peddling business that he had.
This, talking with Miranda Devine, whose latest book, Laptop from Hell, Hunter Biden, Big Tech, and the Dirty Secrets the President Tried to Hide. When I hear, especially because the stuff with Russia and Ukraine, Burisma is unbelievable. And then with the CEFC, I was reading, because there have been some excerpts as well from your book that's been out, the diamond, that Chairman Ye, who's the guy with CEFC, a 3-carat, $80-something thousand diamond that he gave to Hunter Biden, who really needed the money at that time. This guy you wrote, former deputy of the CCP's propaganda arm. A really young, charismatic, apparently, going by Chinese media, billionaire who's right in line with the CCP. I read stuff like this, and I think you have the son of the President of the United States, essentially a grifter, with the chairman of this, has the blessing of the CCP. How do they reconcile, for instance, some of the stuff that they talk about just with legislatively, like their green energy stuff, which empowers and enriches China, which is exactly what you would broker, a kind of deal that you would broker with them through CEFC. I mean, it comes full circle here. What floors me is how no other media is questioning whether or not the Bidens are making money by some of the green energy stuff that they're promoting that China has the monopoly over.
Well, this is the problem. Every single thing that this country does, every single policy that Joe Biden, enacts that has something to do with people overseas, the countries that his family has made lots of money out of, is going to be called into question. And, it's also opaque. He's lied about it. His family has lied about it. We know that there are these investigations going on into both Hunter Biden and into Jim Biden. We only found out about that after the election. The American people were not allowed the proper due diligence that is normally done by the media on one candidate, because there was such an imperative from so many in the media to just get rid of Donald Trump at any cost. And of course, the pandemic gave Joe Biden perfect cover to hide in the basement and not really be subjected to the normal media scrutiny. And then, of course, the pandemic also allowed the Democratic Party to change the rules in battleground states for voting. And so this was a perfect storm that allowed a really unsuitable person to slip into the highest office in the land, the leader of the free world. It's quite frightening. And I think that the media it deserves a lot of blame for just going easy on Joe Biden and not doing that proper investigation into what was a lot of it. I mean, his entire career, there have been investigations. The New York Times has even written about stories about, inconsistencies with his buying of these lavish, mansions that he lives in Delaware. There have been bits and pieces of, tough questioning of Joe Biden, but he's very good at pushing back. And, when Hunter Biden was being given these grace and favor jobs at wildly inflated salaries by Joe Biden's credit card MBNA donors in Delaware, and he was quizzed about it, but he just gets very aggressive and he says, no, that's not true. Hunter went to Yale thanks to Daddy, and he deserved that kind of money. He sort of pushes back so aggressively. He lies so reflexively that I think he fooled a lot of people. And also, he had genuine tragedy in his life with his very early, before his Senate career really started, his wife and his baby daughter were killed in a car crash, and Hunter and his older brother Beau both were very badly injured. And, you know, that iconic photograph of Joe Biden getting sworn in at his motherless little injured boy's hospital bedside just tugged on the strings of every American. I mean, it went into the consciousness and became embedded as part of Joe Biden's life narrative, and he's used it in every campaign that he's ever had. And, you know, it would be a very cold heart that wouldn't feel sympathy for him. But he's traded on that. And then, of course, then his golden child, Beau, who he had, you know, destined to be a future president, he died tragically of a brain tumor. So he has had great tragedy, but that doesn't excuse him for the sort of behaviour that he's had, but it has given him a sort of a free pass.
Last quick question for you, Miranda, because I got to get after that, especially as you said that he has definitely played on that. The president has. I'm sure that you saw the piece. They were talking about the Christmas stockings on the fireplace, where it had they had 6 of the 7 grandkids, and they left out was the 3-year-old daughter of Hunter Biden that he had with the woman from Arkansas that he apparently met at a strip club in D.C. And they kind of had a fight over making sure that he took responsibility for that child. Just what's your thought on that? Because that seemed kind of trashy of the Bidens to not. They had a DNA test, for crying out loud. I mean, they know it's his granddaughter. It just seemed kind of in really bad taste.
Yeah, really, just a terrible thing to do, really immoral. And, you know, Hunter Biden had this poor woman, London Alexis Roberts, who was a stripper, and met him, had a long-term affair with him. He pretended in his memoir that he can't even remember. He had a one-off interaction with her. I can't even remember her. He was so out of it. That's not true. The laptop shows that he was smuggling her into his office building in Washington at night over several months. He wrote a glowing recommendation for her to the building supervisors to say that she was perfectly entitled to come into the building. And he said that she was the basketball coach of his daughter and Sasha Obama, president's daughter. And so, you know, he knew all about her. He knew what her GPA average had been. He knew that she was a basketball star. She was a human being. There were text messages of them. Text conversations between them. She told him she was pregnant early on. She kept him up to date about her pregnancy, and then he pretended that he didn't know about it. He forced her to go to an Arkansas court. She's from Arkansas. She has no money. Forced her to go and, file for a paternity case, which he lost. The DNA showed it to be his child. And yet even in his memoir, 2.5 years later, he didn't acknowledge that child. In the back of the memoir, he talks about all his children, but not this other child. And I think that's just really bad taste.
Very bad taste indeed. Miranda Devine, the book, Laptop from Hell, a must read. Miranda, awesome work as always, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On the book. What a cover. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Dana.
So coming up, have we lost confidence in the pillars, the very pillars of our civilization? Victor Davis Hanson joins me next to discuss. Keep it here. You have homeowners insurance for a good reason, because without it, a fire, flood, or burglary could destroy you financially. But there's another major crime your homeowner's policy doesn't cover, and it's called home title fraud. And law enforcement calls title fraud one of the fastest growing crimes, and it can ruin you financially. So you need to be proactive and get home title lock. Title fraud happens when a criminal forges your signature on documents stating that you sold your home to them, and then they can take out loans against your home and leave you with the payments. You'll spend a fortune in legal fees trying to prove that you didn't commit fraud. Home title lock puts a barrier around your home's title, and the instant they detect anyone, from a cyber thief to a renter to a relative trying to forge their way onto your home's title, they help shut it down. Visit HometitleLock.com, register your address to see if you could potentially be a victim, and enter code RADIO for 30 free days of protection. Welcome back. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Have Americans officially lost our faith? Have we lost our faith in the pillars of American civilization? My next guest says yes, and that no one yet knows the effects that this is going to have on the country. It's a great piece, in fact, A Tale of Two Cities, Kenosha to Waukesha. Victor Davis Hanson, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institute and author of The Dying Citizen. Always good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for being here. I loved this piece because, and I like what you said too, Rittenhouse should have never been charged, and Brooks, talking about the Waukesha murderer, should have never been out of jail. Now we're about to see all new coverage too with this latest, with this horrible school shooting in Michigan. I think it's going to make all this stuff look it's going to be 1,000 times worse than this. Talk to me a little bit about that, because it feels like everything is is turned around. And it felt, honestly, when I was watching some of the live coverage of the Rittenhouse trial, it really did feel like a state-sanctioned, lengthened 2 minutes hate sort of session. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Well, you know, there's that old term, jump the shark, when something becomes so ridiculous that it's no longer credible by even its supporters. And so we're having this narrative that there's an epidemic of racist violence against people of color perpetuated by law enforcement and to a lesser degree the white population, even as when you look at these news events, they either are black on white crime, or when they're white on white violence, they have nothing to do with race, but they're claimed to be racially motivated. I don't know how that was possible in Kenosha. And then we have these pseudo crimes, and we've seen a lot of those, whether it was minor ones. I mean, they were crimes of a sort, the Covington kids or the Duke lacrosse or hands up, don't shoot, which was not ever spoken. And then we saw that we're right in the middle of a Juicy Smollett. So you've got this narrative that is colliding with the facts or reality. And the more that it collides, the more the perpetrators of this fiction keep getting angrier and double down. But it's now becoming almost surreal. It's ridiculous. There's no way that the majority of Americans are going to believe it. In fact, if you look at the polls, BLM has just crashed, and a plurality of Americans don't support it at all anymore. And when you look at their views on crime, it's the same thing. So I don't know where this ends up, but the current trajectory of the left is not going to be sustainable.
No, I don't see it. I don't see it as being that way. Talking with our friend Victor Davis Hanson, and to this point, is it fair to say that it feels like when you talked about the left doubling down on this, it seems as though if you fail to admit or fail to accept their narrative, then that's like just further proof of your guilt. That's how it seems that the left tries to get around, don't trust what your eyes are telling you, trust what we're telling you. And if you disagree with it, well, that's just further proof. That's Ibram X. Kendi. That's just further proof of your bigotry.
It is, but even that, I think, when you start to see a couple, and they were African-American couple, attacked an 81-year-old woman murdered in Beverly Hills by a career felon who was arrested in the midst of committing another break-in and felony, or when you see Walnut Creek, California, which is pretty affluent, a suburb of the Bay Area, and there's a smash and grab mass theft from there, or 60 killings in Portland. You're not in red state America is what I'm trying to say. You're in the heart of liberal, blue, California, West Coast culture. And these are the communities that supported, the defund the police, no bail legislation, or anything under $995 is not a felony. And they are finding themselves no longer exempt. It's not happening just in Chicago or Baltimore or Washington, D.C. or Stockton, California. It's getting close to home, and there's no exemptions given their liberality. So when you talk to them, and I have talked to them, they're dumbfounded. Well, don't people understand that we supported this legislation? Why are they doing this to our community? Why is there violence on our campus? And I think you're going to see a stealth vote like we haven't seen in a long time, of people who will vote one way but never admit that either before or after that they would do such a thing.
And it's weird to see the left try to reconcile that amongst themselves. You wrote about Seth Rogen and him responding to this YouTuber whose car was broken into, and he was saying, "I can't believe this is happening," etc. And Seth Rogen was getting onto him for condemning just the crime rate and how bad Los Angeles has gotten. So it's, even if you're questioning things, there's still those self-appointed bouncers of the left who are trying to draw their own people back into line. But I think they're losing that. Do you agree?
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was roundly attacked for that by everybody. And I use that as an example of what I call third worldization. Not just that there's no safety in Los Angeles anymore, which is typical of the old third world, but in the old third world, the very wealthy had estates and walled compounds, and they had money and influence, and they were always exempt. And they were sort of like Seth Rogen with his 2 Hollywood mansions, walls, surveillance, and say, I've been broken in 15 times, who cares? It's just property. But it's not just property to somebody that doesn't have those assets. And so his attitude of disdain and smugness is just typical of a third world elite that doesn't really care about the poor or the vanishing middle class. And I think people are going to get very tired of this. And I think they're starting to see it's a force multiplier, Dan. They're looking at supply chain interruptions. They're looking at gas prices, inflation. They're looking at this crazy open border, and they're saying there's a connection with crime. And the connection is that we have a lot of left-wing utopians that force down agendas that anybody knew was contrary to human nature and wouldn't work. But they did it because they would never suffer themselves from the consequences of their own policy. And I think now they're not exempt. It's been so disastrous that crime is finding them out, and the border will find them out, and inflation will find them out, and et cetera, et cetera.
I think that's why we haven't had lockdowns again, at least yet, because of something like that, because they realized that there were too many people on the left, especially just seeing all the protests that were happening out in California. California, of all places, people protesting. It's pretty unbelievable. Victor Davis Hanson, always appreciate your time, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate your words.
Thank you.
Of course. So coming up, Alec Baldwin's pretty shocking response when asked if he felt guilt for the tragedy that he was responsible for on the set of the film Rust. We'll lay that out next. Stay with us. Thanks to Biden's economic policies, job numbers have been abysmal and inflation is skyrocketing. Instead of following the former president's pro-business agenda that had the economy booming, Biden wants to tax corporations and pass trillion-dollar bills we can't pay for. It's time for you to be proactive and take steps to protect your wealth in retirement by investing in gold and precious metals, and Legacy Precious Metals can help. Washington keeps printing money for their outrageous bills, but all that does is devalue your dollar. Gold offers a hedge against inflation, and as the dollar gets weaker, gold gets stronger. The folks at Legacy Precious Metals are the gold standard when it comes to investing in precious metals, and they have a team of experts who can counsel you on the best options for you and your family. Don't leave your retirement to chance. Call Legacy Precious Metals at 866-580-2088. Visit them online, get their free investor's guide full of useful info at legacypminvestments.com.
Your emotions are so clearly so right there on the surface. You felt shock. You felt anger. You felt sadness. Do you feel guilt?
No. I feel that there is. I feel that someone is responsible for what happened, and I can't say who that is, but I know it's not me.
I've watched this clip, I don't know how many times, and my jaw hits the floor every single time still. It's unbelievable. And that's just one shocking piece of video. There's like shocking clip after shocking clip, one right after the other. That was Alec Baldwin, obviously, in his first interview since firing a gun. He pulled the trigger and he killed his cinematographer, Helena Hutchins, and hurt the director, Joel Souza, on the set of the film Rust. Now, the first observation is, who is your PR person? Who's your lawyer? Why did your lawyer let you go on television and say something like this? I don't know who did it, but it wasn't me. No. If I get that he's trying to lay the case for a defense here, but it makes him look horrible. And part of that defense is how empathetic you look, how sympathetic you look. It was Alec Baldwin that pointed the gun at Helena Hutchins. It was Alec Baldwin that pulled the trigger. It was Alec Baldwin who was the producer of the film, which means, as we talked to Gloria Allred yesterday, yes, he bears responsibility. He bears responsibility also as a producer because the buck stops with him. He runs the set. He determines the safety protocols on the set. He makes sure that the safety protocols are followed on the set. So in other words, perhaps no one is more responsible for this accident than Alec Baldwin. It's just mind-blowing for him to play the victim here. It's insane that he actually said these words in that order on national television about a woman he killed because he didn't pop open the cylinder of the revolver that he was pointing at people and check to see if it was loaded and if it was loaded with actual live rounds or dummy rounds. From the beginning, I've said that I believe it was an accident. I don't take pleasure in what happened to Alec Baldwin. And I even said, pray for him, pray for the family of the Hutchins family and Susan, everyone involved, and I meant it. But as I also said, ultimately, the responsibility to check that gun falls on the final gatekeeper, the person handling the gun. And the person handling the gun was Alec Baldwin. Number one rule of firearm safety is you treat every gun as though it is loaded. Every gun. And when you are handed a firearm, you do what we call a press check. You look to see if a round is chambered before using a firearm. It's a semi-automatic, you can slide it back. Baldwin was using a Pieta replica of a Colt 1873 single-action Army revolver. Now, I'm familiar with single-action. I got myself a Colt Cattleman. I have fired single-actions before. I know how it works. You got the hammer that has 3 positions. While Baldwin wants to he really does want to falsely portray this as being some kind of potential quasi-drop fire sort of thing. That's at least what I'm getting from this. The bottom line, though, that's actually not the point. The point is that he was handling it. He pulled the trigger. Guns don't fire by themselves, while pointing this replica, as I understand it, his barrel at someone. Now, if on set and you're working with what you assume are blanks, you inspect each firearm. You inspect each round with the armorer. It's a licensed weapons specialist, and you know and understand what's happening. And it's very easy to see what's a dummy round and what's a live round. So in this same interview with George Stephanopoulos mentioned that George Clooney said that he also performs a check on a weapon as well, even after the gun is declared safe and handed to him by the armorer. Baldwin apparently felt that those comments by Clooney weren't helpful. And they're not helpful because Baldwin doesn't intend to take responsibility for this incident. But he sure has an easy time blaming law-abiding gun owners for the actions of criminals in illegal possession. There are a lot of legal discussions going on behind the scenes that are probably affecting his answers, obviously. But I don't know if this is a PR disaster. Baldwin would have been better off not even taking this interview than saying that he takes no responsibility for the accident and feels no guilt. Good people feel guilt when they make any kind of mistake, and especially when that mistake hurts another human. Think about how you feel when you unintentionally hurt somebody else. I mean, your conscience bothers you, sometimes even more than it should, even though it was an accident and not something that you did on purpose. Yet, if you hurt someone, even by accident, you feel it, and you should be worried if you don't. It's just really off-putting and awful to see him be so incredibly cold about it. And it's one thing to make a mistake, it's another thing to callously double down on that mistake. He's trying to avoid charges, which are still yet to be determined. We'll see. Investigation's ongoing. That does it for us tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Good night, and don't bend the knee.